Good morning. Welcome to the virtual worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula. My name is Mike Lovell, and I am currently serving as a member of our church's Board of Trustees. We are a congregation of people of different ages, races, classes, religious and sexual orientations, gender identities, and political views. Our purpose is to change our own lives, even as we work to change the world around us through love, learning, and service to others. If you are a visitor with us today, please fill out our virtual visitor card. You can find the link in the Zoom chat box or on the church's website. You can also view past services on our church website. Our worship theme for this month is Holding History. Today's service, entitled History That Changed My Life, Holding History, Releasing History, Living in the Eternal Now, is led by worship associates Ray Krice and Natalie Freiberger. Have you checked out our weekly e-news lately? The weekly e-news contains information about many timely activities here at UUCMP. It is available on the church website and via email. The latest e-news, dated Wednesday, November 24th, lists many upcoming meetings and events, social justice calls to action, and all the religious exploration activities this week. If you're not receiving the e-news in your email, you can subscribe on our website or by contacting the office staff. The Reopening Task Force invites you to tell us how you feel about coming back to live worship in our sanctuary, given the various COVID safety measures and your particular situation. Please complete our brief, less than 15-minute survey on the topic, which is available on the church website now through November 28th. A hard copy will also be mailed to those who need it. Nominations are being accepted for the 2022 Shared Plate recipients now through November 27th. Please submit your nomination of a nonprofit you feel is deserving of our monthly shared collection. We will vote on the nominations at our next social justice meeting, December the 5th. Please plan to attend the December 5th meeting to defend your nomination. See our weekly newsletter and website for more information. Our shared offering recipient for November is Dorothy's Place in Salinas. Checks made out to UUCMP with Dorothy's Place in the memo line will support this important group. Founded in 1982 by a group of Catholic worker volunteers, this organization exists to serve marginalized neighbors throughout Monterey County and to provide healthy, sustainable life in permanent housing. And now, please enjoy our musical prelude.
Our call to worship this morning is a poem by Richard S. Gilbert. It's entitled, "We Bid You Welcome." We bid you welcome who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome who join us as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit and find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Come, let us worship.
And now please join as we sing There Is a Love, led in 3 parts by the choir.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all I rest in. This love, there is a love holding me. There is a love in all that I know. There is a love in
With Unitarian Universalists throughout the world, we light our chalice, the symbol of our covenanted aspirations of love, hope, and justice. I'll begin with the words of the leader and ask you to join me in a unison response as Natalie lights the chalice. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as the symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Our story for all ages today is Here and Now by Julia Denos and illustrated by E.B. Goodale. And this is how the story goes. Right here, right now you are reading this book. The book is in your lap, or in your hands, or someone else's, or maybe on a screen. You are sitting, or you are standing, or you are wrapped up in a bed. Under your bum, under your feet, is a seat, a floor, or a cloud if you are on an airplane. And under all of those things is the earth, the grass, and the dirt, the earthworms and the fossils, the rocks. And the earth is spinning in the middle of space. We don't know why, but it is. And you are too. Right here, right now, while you are reading this book, many, many things are happening. Rain is forming in the belly of a cloud. An ant has finished its home on the other side of the planet. Somewhere, a telephone is ringing. An idea is blooming. Grass is pushing up through cement. A friend you haven't met yet is sitting down to dinner. There are animals, wild ones and tame, living and breathing all around you. Muscles are growing, cities are growing, babies are growing, cuts and broken bones are sewing up and healing. Unseen work is being done. Right here, right now, you are becoming. Isn't it wonderful?
My upbringing was rich in history, in stories of family members I had never met, of historical events that brought us to the United States. My parents and grandparents were forcibly removed from their homeland, taken by German troops during World War II, from Ukraine to work in labor camps in northern Germany. My mother didn't have any eyebrows. They burned off when the Allied troops dropped incendiary bombs to fight the Germans, and my parents ran through fires with wet towels on their faces. She loved to tell that story and many more of survival in harsh conditions of the camps. How she would take a Red Cross package and trade individual cigarettes for loaves of bread and soup makings to put dinner on the table every night. Of going into labor during an air raid and walking down an empty street to the clinic, clutching onto lampposts as the pains would start. These are the family stories I grew up with. Every Thanksgiving at the family table, we raised our glasses in gratitude to Eleanor Roosevelt. It was thanks to her efforts that my family ended up in North America and not South America, like some of my mother's friends. After the war ended, in Europe, there were over 11 million refugees or displaced persons, DPs. Camps were created to house them temporarily, and Eleanor visited one of them. She then used her considerable influence to address the plight of the DPs, and Congress agreed to accept a certain amount of them, to include my parents and grandparents. My father was hired by the Defense Language Institute here in Monterey. My mother packed fish on Cannery Row. For me, growing up in Monterey in a safe environment, these stories of life and death situations, of famines, of family fortunes lost in a revolution, of relatives imprisoned and sent to Siberia, seemed to belong to a different world. But in this world, my grandmother continued to save scraps of bread, dry them up in the oven, and store them in glass jars, just in case there was a famine. We were the only family on the block with a bomb shelter under the house, just in case the Russians attacked. Money was stored under the mattresses. Silver coins were sewn into the curtains, just in case the banks failed. But growing up displaced was not all caution and concern. Quite the opposite. My parents found ways to keep elements of their culture and to have fun doing it. Even in the labor camp in Germany, my parents, who were in their 20s, built a still to make vodka from potato peelings. In Monterey, my parents brought skills they learned as children and taught us how to forage for mushrooms, pick berries, catch fish and crawdads. Their dinner parties were famous. My mother serving homemade smoked fish and marinated mushrooms, while my father and his friends recited their latest poetry and discussed literature late into the night. We hiked and camped, and my father made me memorize the Russian and English names for flowers. And of course, we only spoke Russian in the house and with my parents. It wasn't easy growing up the child of refugees, learning the history of two countries, two cultures, and doing it in two languages. When I would become confused, I asked questions of my father, and he always treated them seriously and gave me thoughtful answers. I asked him once, when did the words come to him for his poems? Did they come during the event that he wrote about? His answer stays with me even today. He said that he immerses himself fully into the moment and later, in privacy, reflects and writes on his experience. Immerses himself into the moment. With such a traumatic life behind him, he didn't let it define him. He focused on living, finding joy in the natural world and in his creative process. This lesson went beyond culture and beyond history. This was a model on how to live my own life.
And now please join as we sing For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build the common good, and make our own days glad. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks.
This is the time we take each week to pause and think about what's been happening in our own lives and in the lives of those we care about, whether they're close by or far away. Let us keep in our hearts all those who are suffering from violence and its consequences, all the troubling events in the news, our hurting world that needs more love, more care, more peace. We each bring with us our own joys and sorrows, so many people and happenings which are on our minds and in our hearts. We'll drop a few pebbles representing your individual joys and sorrows into our shared waters of love and support. If you like, you can write a shared love or concern in the chat. You can also contact our sabbatical minister or the Caring Network directly. Our meditation this morning is a Thanksgiving meditation, which is written by Naomi King. Every day, we experience hunger and yearning for food, for approval, for respect, for love, for meaningful work, for any and enough work, for home, for family, for friends, for health, for healing, for hope, for the departed, for the newly arrived, for the green trees and for the cool, clean waters, for shade in the heat of the day, and for stars to light the velvet night. Every day, we are invited anew to be thankful for food, for approval, for respect, for love, for meaningful work, for any and enough work, for home, for family, for friends, for health, for healing, for hope, for the departed and the newly arrived, for the green trees and the cool, clean waters, for shade in the heat of the day, and for stars to light the velvet night. Our hearts beating in liberating flight, we soar in gratitude for the gifts we have in this day, in this lifetime of being, and turn again to share this bounty with all that is. Amen. This now is the time we take for our morning offering. We encourage you to think about your financial support for our church and the resources we require to carry out our good work. We encourage you to write a check and drop it in the mail, or use the donate button on our website. You're also encouraged to contribute to our shared offering recipient this month, Dorothy's Place in Salinas. And now, please enjoy our offertory music. Our first reading this morning is from Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found by Lewis Carroll. In this segment, Alice meets the White Queen. "I don't understand you," said Alice. "It's dreadfully confusing." "Well, that's the effect of living backwards," the Queen said kindly. "It always makes one a little giddy at first." "Living backwards?" Alice repeated in astonishment. "I've never heard of such a thing." The Queen said, "But there's one great advantage in it, that one's memory works both ways." "I'm sure mine only works one way," Alice remarked. I can't remember things before they've happened." "It's a poor sort of memory that only works one way, backwards," the Queen remarked. "Well, what sort of things do you remember best?" Alice ventured to ask. Oh, things that happened the week after next, the Queen replied in a kind of careless way. For instance, now, she went on, there's the king's messenger. He's in prison now, being punished, and the trial doesn't even begin till next Wednesday. And of course, the crime comes last of all. Suppose he never commits the crime, said Alice. That'd be all the better, wouldn't it? The Queen said. Alice felt there was no denying that.
Today's second reading is from a letter written by Ralph Waldo Emerson to his daughter in 1854. Emerson wrote, "Write it on your heart that every day is the best day of the year. He is rich who owns the day, and no one owns the day who allows it to be invaded with fret and anxiety. Finish every day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities, no doubt, crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, with too high a spirit to be cumbered with your old nonsense. This day is too dear with its hopes and invitations to waste a moment on the yesterdays."
Our third and final reading today is from a sermon by Paul Tillich entitled The Eternal Now. Tillich wrote, "The mystery of the future and the mystery of the past are united in the mystery of the present. Our time, the time we have, is the time in which we have presence. But how can we have presence? Is not the present moment gone just as we even think of it? Is not the present the ever-moving boundary between past and future? But a moving boundary is not a place to stand on. If nothing were given to us except the not more of the past and the not yet of the future, we would not have anything. We could not speak of that time that is our own time. We would not have presence. The mystery is that we have a present, and even more, that we have our future also because we anticipate it in the present, and that we have our past also because we remember it in the present. In the present, our future and our past are ours. But there is no present if we think of the never-ending flux of time. The riddle of the present is the deepest of all the riddles of time."
After my mother passed away, and when my father decided to sell our home in New Jersey, my sister and I ventured up into the attic of my parents' house, and there among many sealed cartons seemed to like attics a lot, we found a box with my name on it. Without opening that box, it went into those things that would ultimately be sent out to my home in California. For years, that carton remained unopened in the cellar of my home in Oakland. Cellars like sealed cartons also, it seems. And later, also unopened in my apartment here in Pacific Grove. But finally, when downsizing to a smaller apartment, I opened up the box. I poured out everything onto the floor, and there, before me, was a remarkable set of items all about my early life, from birth until college years. Birth certificates, baby shoes in bronze, report cards, vaccination records, a letter I'd sent my mom that she particularly liked on Mother's Day one year, photographs, so many photographs. When he came back from World War II, my dad wanted to be a professional photographer. So my early childhood was very well documented in terms of photography, and he used my photos to try to get clients for his business. There was a note from my mom to my kindergarten teacher recounting how that was unable to remove my galoshes on a rainy second day of kindergarten, and how I had just run home without telling the teacher, afraid to ask Miss Baker for help and admit my ineptitude in class. There were newspaper clippings of my high school American Legion oratorical contest coming in third in the state of New Jersey one year, a copy of my speech at high school graduation, and records of my SAT scores. Now, seeing those SAT scores was something of an eye-opener to me. The numbers were a lot lower than I remembered them to have been. Certainly lower than I'd been telling myself and a lot of other people for many decades. I thought, no wonder I didn't get admitted to Princeton. All told, that box was a remarkable retelling of the history of the first 2 decades of my life. This month's worship theme has been Holding History. And a tagline for this service is History That Changed My Life. Each of us, looking back, can identify the people, places, historical events, and life decisions that have made a difference in our lives and formed the basis upon which we are who we are today. For me, it would be my grandmother, all my family, the minister of the church in which I grew up, the chaplain of my college, Mrs. Anderson, a speech teacher in high school, a myriad of stalwart friends, the Vietnam War, the civil rights struggles of the 60s and 70s, the Kent State massacre of student protesters. All these things changed my life. And of course, it's not just things that have happened that change life. It's also things that don't happen. Graduating from theological school, but no longer able really to function as a Christian professional religious, I ventured down a business path instead. But had I known something about Unitarian Universalism back then, my life might have been quite different. It seems completely right to me that those of us attempting to live a life something like an examined life would have reviewed our past and holding history in a personal and social sense is clearly important. But curiously, for my part, it seems that we must also be prepared not to hold history only, but also to release it. There's a danger of letting history devolve into regret or the feeling of being impounded by the past, unable to change. I had an uncle who loved the phrase, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I would have done things differently if I could have. I know I should have. And oh yes, history yet to come, otherwise known as the future, can also be problematic. Of course, we need to look ahead, plan properly for what's to come, but if concern for what's to come causes anxiety, once again devitalizes our present being, we may become immobilized. History, history, history. It's really a recounting of time. And that time concept has confounded our species, both as a group and individually, troubling, informing, and driving us humans forward for millennia, ever since our cognitive abilities allowed us to reflect upon it. We measure time as individuals through our own aging process and by the rites of passage which provide the benchmarks of our societal experience. We explain it as the natural phenomenon of light and dark, day and night. We mark it with the changing seasons and the length of sunlight. Cultural myths about time have built great empires and helped sustain human life through the ages of our cultural evolution. We learn from the past in memory or are burdened by it. We look to the future with hope or may be cast into thoughts of personal demise or social dystopia. Time, after all, is a hypothetical construct. It's a rich metaphor for what's even more difficult to grasp, the idea of eternity. George Bernard Shaw said in Man and Superman, "Nobody could stand an eternity in heaven." And from my point of view, I have to say, the idea of everlasting life, not particularly appealing. I'm not sure I could stand myself for that long. But finding the centering point of our own eternal time for each of us may help us to know who we are and how our lives matter now in the fleeting moments that have been granted to us. As we seek some sense of the eternal, we're constantly pulled by that relentlessly driving march, the reality of the temporal order. It's the 4th of July, it's Labor Day, it's Halloween, now it's Thanksgiving, and on and on. We surround ourselves with calendars. There's a song by a contemporary singer-songwriter, Conor Oberst, entitled "The Calendar Hung Itself." I think that's a promising idea. Let's let these calendars hang themselves. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time to wake up, get dressed, a little breakfast, get the kids out to school, off to work, and on and on. We surround ourselves with clocks. Salvador Dali had the right idea, I think, with several of his paintings. You remember his depiction of pocket watches? Let those watches melt and dissolve. Let's let all our clocks soften like butter and slide off the walls. Lewis Carroll, in his friendly, surreal, through the looking glass way, wants us to snap out of our temporal bonds. The White Queen, remember her? Instructs Alice on the virtues of living backwards, where past and future get jumbled, and memory works in two directions at once, past and future. It's another creative device to help us loose the bonds of time. We humankind don't seem to do well when we think about time within the frame of a single human life. Explicating the stages of life as described by Dante, Joseph Campbell, our 20th century professor of comparative mythology, tells an interesting story about lecturing on Dante's ideas. Let's tarry on Dante for a minute. Dante describes 4 stages of human development. From birth to age 25 is adolescence and childhood. I know many early 20-somethings don't like to hear that, but let's face it. So that's a time of dependency and learning and grounding one's life for the future. The next stage goes from 26 to 45. This is the stage of achievement, building, family, growth. Beyond 46 to 70 is the time of wisdom, maturity, reflection, giving back what we've learned to subsequent generations. And finally, This is a tough one for me. And finally, the age of 70 and beyond. Well, Dante pretty much just said it was the time of decrepitude. And that's a little bit hard for me coming up on my 77th birthday, but I'm afraid I'm also experiencing it. But in our last days, we look back upon our lives with gratitude and prepare ourselves with grace and courage for the final days in our travels through the dark curtain to certain demise. Well, following that lecture, Campbell was accosted by a young man who said, "I appreciate your discussion of Dante's stages of life, Professor, but you don't understand. My generation," and this was some years ago, he was talking about his generation was, like mine and a lot of my audiences today, baby boomers. He said, "My generation goes directly from childhood to wisdom." Campbell's response was quick and to the point. "That's great, young man," he said. "The only thing you've missed is your life." And for Campbell, the eternal could only be found in the experience of this life. He said, I'll quote here, "The experience of eternity right here and now is the function of life. Heaven is not the place to experience this. Here is the place to have that kind of experience. When you realize that eternity is right here now, that's within your possibility to experience the eternity of your own truth and being, then you grasp the following. That which you are was never born and will never die." End quote. For my part, I believe that without some sense of the eternal, traversing the times and stages of our lives can be difficult, making us apprehensive. When a 20-something hears 3 knocks at the door, her response is likely to be, "Oh, wow, here it comes." But when at age 77, I hear those same 3 knocks, my response might be, "Oh boy, here it comes." So we're enslaved by history and time, driven by its ticking clocks, daily planners, burdened by our pasts and fearful for our futures. How do we get free? In his seminal sermon, The Eternal Now, renowned 20th century philosopher, theologian, Paul Tillich counsels as follows. I'll quote, "There is no answer to this except that which comprises all time and lies beyond it, a sense of the eternal. Whenever we say now or today, we stop the flux of time for us. We accept the present, and we don't care that it's gone the same moment we accept it. We live in it, and it's renewed for us in every new present. This is possible because every moment of time reaches into the eternal. It's the eternal that stops the flux of time. It's the eternal now which provides for us a temporal now. Now, not everybody and nobody all the time is aware of this eternal now, but sometimes it breaks through powerfully into our consciousness and gives us the certainty of the eternal, of a dimension of time which cuts into time and gives us our time. People who are never aware of this dimension lose the possibility of resting in the present, resting. They are held by the past, cannot separate themselves from it, or they escape towards the future and able to rest in the present. They have not entered the eternal rest, which stops the flux of time and gives us the blessing of the moment. Perhaps this is the most conspicuous characteristic of our period, especially in the Western world and particularly this country. It lacks the courage to accept presence because it's lost the dimension of the eternal. End quote from Tillich. So if you're burdened by the past and fearful of your future, Tillich goes on, quote, there's one answer to these questions, the eternal. There's one power that surpasses the all-consuming power of time, the eternal. All that was and is to come, the beginning and the end. It gives us forgiveness for what is past. It gives us courage for what is to come. It gives us rest in the present. Well, that's pretty philosophical language from one of the seminal thinkers of the last century, but I think I get it. The way to stop the intrusive, enslaving rat-a-tat-tat of time is to go beyond it. Experience its ground, which is the ground of all history, of all time. And this is not necessarily a mystical event, although it may be for some people. It's a matter of experience. And where does this experience take place? Right here in this world. As the writer of the Gnostic Thomas Gospel said, eternity, which is his kingdom of God, is spread out upon the world right before us. We just need to see it, grasp it, understand it, feel it. And when does the experience of the eternal happen? As Joseph Campbell said, it happens in each of our lives right now. You can't defer the eternal now. And how can it happen? Well, I think we have to stay awake, be alert, remain open to the glimpses of the eternal, which break through the humdrum of our daily grind and the boredom of our daily time. And why can the experience of the eternal even happen? Because we are one with all that is. And as such, we have eternity in our DNA. The star stuff of which we are made has been around forever. The cosmos is a great garden, or better yet, a vast, timeless field of wildflowers. And we're just one of those timeless cosmic blossoms. The 18th century poet William Blake wrote, to see a world in a grain of sand or heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And how do we find the experience of the eternal? Well, each of you must tell me, for each of us will find it in her or his own way. Meditation? Sure. Yoga? Likely. But you can find it in the handshake of a friend, the cracking of an Aristotelian proposition, gazing at the stars, playing the piano, playing baseball. A myriad of experiential, eternal epiphanies is possible. Win with courage. Don't be afraid. We say now, and take possession of our world. We grasp the eternal now. And what happens when the eternal breaks through for me? I do find rest in the presence of myself. I can be who I am. I can find the authentic. I can find the authentic me. And I can give thanks for what I've been given. I can embrace those I love and those who love me. I can do my best to contribute to this wonderful, timeless process of life, informed by my memories, but not burdened by them, and hopeful for the future, not fearful of what the future may hold. And I'll seek the eternal now of each moment. I will seek it in gratitude, to participate fully in the co-creativity I have with this timeless, tremendous, fascinating, mysterious, unfolding process that is my life and your life and our lives together. to unfold the love that has been given to me in the past into the present, and to engender hope by working now for the just world I seek. Again, here is William Blake, who said, "Eternity is in love with the productions of time." May the productions of our lives in our times truly shimmer with love and hope and joy, worthy of our eternal selves in this eternal time.
And now please join us as we sing For the Beauty of the Earth. For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, neighbor, sibling, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Please join in the unison words as Natalie extinguishes our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but take its light into our lives to be the presence of love in the midst of fear, the voice of hope in the face of despair, and the hands of justice restoring a world worthy of our children. Our benediction today is by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of, and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we still too dream. Let us now go, remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. So may it be. Amen.
you.